So we're here at the Mexico Anthropology Museum, the main museum in Mexico. We've been here several times before. I've been coming here since 2003. Today we're going to show you some footage from previous visits and some new footage of very interesting pieces relating to the Olmecs. Very specifically, we're going to look in the Olmec area, the section, plus other areas of cultures that were influenced by the Olmecs and their expansion through Mexico. Let's get in and take a look. I'm here with JJ Ainsworth, and there's a lot to see, so let's get in, explore, and see what we can find. So we're here in the National Museum of Mexico. Just doing a follow-up to my Olmec video. I've got to wear a mask, they're quite strict here. This is a third visit. We're here in 2020 because there's a few extra pieces in the museum I wanted to show you which are Olmec related. But this is from a very interesting site in Guerrero, which is inaccessible now. This is one of the most interesting pieces. It's from a site called Teopantecuanitlan. I'm not going to say that again. This is in Guerrero State. This is an area you can't really go to, but it's a very, very, very interesting site. It has 4 of these in like a sunken plaza, which is thought to measure astronomical alignments, the equinox and solstices. This T-shape is something we're going to have JJ talk about in a moment. But you can see this is like from one of the only Olmec sites with colossal stonework south of Olmec land, really. Obviously we have Chalcatzingo, we have sites in Mexico City which are Olmec related, but this is original Olmec going back to the earliest times, to at least 1400 BC. But there's been a lot of research done. It only really got discovered in 1983, this site. It's got platforms, it's got sunken plazas, it's got ball courts, and it's got 4 of these. It's even got a small, about 3 foot tall Olmec head. Now it's more in the style of what we find in southern Guatemala, the Olmec head, but nonetheless it's fascinating. And one day when Guerrero is safer, we're going to hopefully get a chance to visit the site, because it is open, you can go, but you are going to get kidnapped.
So this artifact here, this upside down T, is found at a very interesting Olmec site, which I can't pronounce, but it's located in Guerrero. And it's interesting because the site that it was found is a sunken courtyard. And it's north-south, but there were 4 of these along the east and west borders. So 2 on each side, but these represent the wind gods. And more than that, they represent fertility. And you can see here that these plants growing out of the top of this circular structure with the X represents that. Now, this means that the Olmecs may have been the originators of the T-shaped, of the wind god that prevailed up until Mayan Aztec times. So, interestingly too, the T-shapes are found worldwide. So, and they all relate to the similar ideas of this wind god, which then changes into much more than that. So, it's interesting because you see that it's anthropomorphic, it's human features, but it's also the jaguar mouth. It's really a wonderful piece of art, and the Olmecs were probably the originators of many of the ideas that we still use today. The Olmecs were really into hearts. Now, a lot of their symbolism, which is hard to decipher, but once you really focus in on it, a lot of their artifacts relate to the heart. And for example, the head area represents one of the aortas coming from the heart, and it's also layered meaning. So the split of the cleft heads of many of the artifacts of the Olmecs represent the heart, but also the ears of the jaguar. And it's so interesting how imaginative these people were.
So we're just looking at more detail on this colossal statue. And you can see like the cross there, you can see like the bands coming around the head, like a headband. And this is quite similar, really. You know, you got the face there with the weird Jaguar kind of look, the kind of eyes. We see that in the Olmec, one of the Olmec statues in this museum, where the eyes kind of are crossed slightly. And if we look at more detail, you can see the almond-shaped eyes, you can see like the cleft lips, the nostrils. You can see kind of like the headband going around it, and on top as well, and going around this side in the shade as well. So this is like absolutely amazing to see this here on display. So it's now thought that the Olmecs were in Guerrero and Morelos from an extremely early date now, going back potentially to 1200, 1400 BC, which is really the peak of the Olmecs. So they would have come down almost immediately after settling on the Gulf Coast. We have the cave paintings of Oxkintok and Jaguar, which are further south, which show the Plumed Serpent as well. So it's one of the earliest depictions of the Plumed Serpent, as well as Olmec kind of warriors and so forth. And really, this site here, where this comes from, is possibly the most important. But we also have Chalcatzingo. But you know, Teopantecuanitlan, where this comes from, which is only named in 1983 or so when it was discovered. You know, they've given it a really difficult name for some reason, but it's really interesting. Now, this is not the only Olmec site in Guerrero. We have other sites where these statues came from. These are from Cuenca del Rio Balsas e Mezcala in Guerrero. These date to at least 1200 BC. You can see the kind of bulbous African features, and he's sort of sitting in a Quizo position, a meditation position, which is something we find in many Olmec statues. Then we have more of a classic jade mask, again from the same site, and some ear walls as well as this gentleman down here who's got classic jade, made of classic jade, and also with Olmec features. So this piece is made of white clay, and it represents a stout masculine individual, and he has a creature across his back. Now this is found in Morelos at Tlatilco, Morelos. Now this is the middle pre-classic period, so this is like the end of the Olmec era. And the fact is, even in Morelos, like where you've got sites like Chalcatzingo, and further south you have Guerrero, we do still find these remarkable Olmec pieces. I mean, look at his cloak with all the crosses on it, all the feathers, the kind of the way it goes down the back there. That is absolutely amazing. So still, even in Morelos, near Chalcatzingo, we find these Olmec pieces. Absolutely amazing. And there's more just out here. These are actually from Chalcatzingo. This is the great kind of Were-Jaguar head that you would actually climb through, apparently. This is Monument 9. Now, the original is no longer here. It's in a different museum. But this is absolutely amazing. Look at these. So again, more Olmec, but further south and later in the whole Olmec world. These crouched figures in the kind of Quizo position from much later, like 900 AD, but again from the area of Guerrero. This is from a later period from Guerrero, but I just wanted to show you this because it's a beautifully carved piece. We also have this piece here from Guerrero as well. Again, this is later. This isn't as early as the Olmec pieces. This is actually from down at Acapulco, a famous holiday destination. It dates to around 600 to 700 AD. These pieces are also from Guerrero, but these are not Olmec. But very interesting nonetheless. We have this kind of monumental looking piece, which is interesting. Almost like an Olmec type little statue there. And this with the 3D relief carving, this is very impressive. And the jade mask tradition, amongst other things. This again, from around 600 to 700 AD. So this is an Olmec site in Mexico City called Tlatilco rather. And it's been completely destroyed now, but burials were found here, potentially Olmec skeletons. Very, you can see like the classic Olmec kind of statue there in one of the offerings or the burials. Absolutely amazing. So this has now been destroyed. It's one of the most devastating parts of archaeology in Mexico, where they've actually devastated, they destroyed it, and the city was built over it. But this again has Olmec connections. So this piece is from Tlatilco, and this shows you a serpent motif all the way around the side of it. Here we have like a monstrous zoomorph. Again, this is kind of Olmec style. If you look at it carefully, you can see what it looks like above there. So this acrobat figure is a classic Olmec style. This was found at Tlatilco in the state of Mexico, burial 154. And you can see this is exactly the kind of yoga move we find in many of the Olmec pieces. There are more Olmec pieces from the Gulf Coast. This is later Olmec. Then we have the classic seated figures. These are actually found near Puebla, further south. Then you have the classic kind of Olmec, especially this guy here, and this one up here. Absolutely amazing. And this goes back to a site called Puebla, and this would be south of the Gulf Coast. So these are all from the Olmec site of Cerro de las Mesas. This is later Olmec. You've got the classic kind of jade baby figurine. Beautiful pieces of jade and jadeite carved. And this does show levels of technology which is very high for its time, really. And we have other very strange pieces down here. And these guys, sort of like ceremonial kind of pieces, almost like very similar to the Olmec jade figures that are found at La Venta. These are all from Cuicuilco, which we're going to go to on this trip. And so is this skull, one of the only ones still left from this particular circular mega pyramid deep in the heart of Mexico City. So these beautiful ceramic pieces were found in Cuicuilco, as was this one here. What on earth that was used for is unclear. That could have been incense. It seems like it was some kind of perfume or incense that was used. This was also used for it as well, found at a nearby site. So these were found, one in Puebla, one in Cueva Tecolote, Hidalgo. Now these date back to 5,000 to 6,000 BC. Look at these. And they're proper, like almost Cro-Magnon type skulls, unlike that you actually find here in Mexico. Let's just zoom in on the details there so we can get some, make out what exactly is from this one here as well. Look at the jaw on that. Absolutely mind-blowing. So in Oaxaca, a site called Monte Alban was created around 500 BC. What's interesting about this is that it has what looks like Olmec carvings called dancers at the site. Now there's a few examples here in the museum. I've been there before. I visited there in 2009, explored the whole site. I'll show you some photos of that. And it's a really interesting place because it has Olmec influences that came down from the Gulf Coast. And we'll see examples of these in some of these so-called dancer statues, which actually could be people who are going to be sacrificed. There's different theories about this, of course, because it was at the end, really, of the Olmec phase, around 500 BC. Here's one of the so-called dancers. And you can see it has Olmecoid features that are in the facial kind of area. It just gives you an information board about it. This shows you all the other sites in this particular area. Now there's multiple artifacts here. Some are interesting. I'll point out the ones I want you to look at because some of them do have Olmec features. It's really these statues here found at the site, which have this Olmecoid appearance. And you can see a whole selection of them are on display here. And you can see the features. I'll just show you some close-ups here. Some of the facial expressions, facial kind of looks, and you can see why these have been related to the Olmecs. And Olmec artifacts have actually been found here as well. Here's just one of the other statues from the site. You can see, look here, you can actually see some of like a jade piece there. These Olmecoid figures from Monte Alban. Here it just shows you a stele with some calendar glyphs on. And this proves this connection between Olmec land and Monte Alban, going back to 1150 BC. This is a Zapotec instrument carved from what looks like a whalebone. What else is interesting here is the fact that there is evidence of occupation here going back to 1150 BC at Monte Alban. And clearly the calendrical system that was developed here, we know that's the case because there's long count calendar glyphs, Zolkin glyphs. There's also a great menhir, which is said to be an astronomical kind of monolith. And so the influence goes back to a very early phase, almost like the peak of the Olmec era. So Oaxaca and Monte Alban was originally Olmec. So this is from a site called Oxkintok in the Yucatan. This is really interesting. Look at his face. This is one of the bulbous, almost Olmec faces that we find in southern Guatemala, or like the sunglasses for eyes. It's almost like he's like an ancestor of the Olmecs who made his way to the Yucatan. This is column 2, it's called. Dates to around 400 AD. So we complete our trip through the Mexico City Anthropology Museum. We hope you enjoyed your journey with us, and please subscribe, check out more Megalithomania videos, and we'll see you next time.